Hey everyone, if you just want to see the meta sets, or if you just want to see the changes from my last few videos, there are timestamps down there, so check that out. Anyways. Hey everyone, Suntide here, Monster Hunter, Set Optimizer, and Physicist, I guess. Gonna tell you about all of the optimized sets for Longsword in Monster Hunter Rise, both for PC and for Switch, for both of them, because they're similar right now. And yeah, we're going to talk about all the sets here. A lot of them are going to be new. A lot of these haven't been looked at before, so first time, fresh off the press. Anyway, let's get to it. So before we talk about the actual longswords, we're going to talk about some of the armor skills, so the rationale behind how we define the best set. And we're going to talk about the progression gear, the gear you might want to get when you're playing through the game, if you're on PC and you're just starting up. And then we're going to talk about how you get the best charms. Of course, if you've played PC before, you can skip through all of that and go straight into where we talk about the best longswords. So first we're going to talk about the raw longsword, the one that is generally going to be the best, but then we're going to talk about the niche elemental longswords that are optimal in a few situations, so they're worth building if you want to do that. Then we're going to talk about how Dragonheart goes in the mix. This is new, people haven't done this yet, so this is fresh off the press. Then we're going to talk about Rousing Roar. Rousing Roar is a Palico skill that can increase your damage, so that changes things as well. We're going to talk about how Rousing Roar can affect the elemental builds. And then finally, we're going to end up by talking about the off-meta builds. So builds that you might want to consider using, even if they aren't going to be the best. So yeah, let's get straight into it, where we talk about important armor skills. So basically, we just want to ask ourselves, which armor skills are good? What do we actually want to put on our longsword armors? So the most obvious and important one is going to be Quick Sheath 3. So if you haven't seen it yet, Quick Sheath 3 is really, really good because it makes your special sheath come out very, very quickly, which is really, really good. It lets you do faster attacks, which lets you do more damage because you attack more quickly. It makes it easier to do counters, and it enables different combos. It enables you to sort of trigger your ER Spirit Slash, so you can just do that to get your Spirit Gauge up. So it's really, really good. So Quick Sheath 3 is the most important skill for a longsword. After that, it's just all in on the damage. After that, you just want to increase your damage as high as possible. The more damage, the better, and the faster the hunt. And the faster the hunt, the safer the hunt. You know, the monster dies twice as fast. That's half as many times you're going to get hit. So yeah, damage is important. So how do we increase damage? So one of the important ways is to increase sharpness using handicraft. Each color of sharpness generally increases damage by about 10%. So right now I'm on white sharpness, which is the highest in this game so far. So you want to use handicraft to get to a level if you can, and then you want to maintain it with skills like Protective Polish or Master's Touch. So Protective Polish gives me just infinite sharpness for some unit of time. Right now I have 60 seconds in which my sharpness won't go down. The other one is Master's Touch, which decreases the chances of sharpness going down depending on your critical hit rate, your affinity. Protective Polish is generally better just because it is cheaper, it uses less slots so you can fit more damage in, but Master's Touch can also work. After that, you want to use damage skills. So Weakness Exploit, Attack Boost, Critical Eye, and Critical Boost. So when you're playing through low rank, generally this is going to be what you're going to pick. Roughly in this order. So Weakness Exploit is super, super important, and it's important at all levels. Attack Boost increases your damage flat. It just always increases your damage. But it's very important at levels 4, especially. Level 4 is very, very important if you can get it. Level 7 as well. Level 6 is pretty important. Level 5 usually isn't worth it. So usually you want to hit these breakpoints if you can. So yeah, Attack Boost is very, very good. Critical Eye is good too, so Critical Eye increases your affinity, your critical hit rate. It generally has a diminishing effect, so the first few points are very, very valuable, the later ones are less so. If you can get Critical Eye 7, that might be worth it if you don't hit max affinity already, but usually the first few points are the most valuable. And then you have Critical Boost, which is similar. It has diminishing effects, and it's really only useful if you already have high critical hit rate. So in general, this is going to be your priority order. Roughly. Weakness Exploit, Attack Boost, Crit Eye, and Crit Boost. Now, late game we can fit all of these on, but if you're just progressing, you can just follow this order, I guess. What other skills do we need? So there are a few nice useful ones. So Speed Sharpening means you sharpen faster. Right now I have Speed Sharpen 3, so I just sharpen once, and that's done. It has a really nice synergy with Protective Polish, so I do that and I have 60 seconds without needing to sharpen again, which is very nice. When you're playing through the game, Fortify can be nice. When you die, you get more damage and defense. If you're struggling, that's really good. With some of the event quests, it can be really good as well because it can save you from some one-shots. It's not really too viable, but early on you can get Punching Draw and Focus, which are both really nice. So Punching Draw lets you stun monsters with your draw attacks, which is nice. Focus lets you increase your gauge faster, which can enable different combos. Right now they aren't going to be used in the main builds because attack is better, but I actually expect that maybe in the expansion we might have space to fit these two skills in after we max out attack boost. Other than that, you can get Free Meal. So Free Meal lets you save on potions, which saves money, and can, I don't know, let you use max potions instead of mega potions, which can make things faster that way. I like using spare slots on Free Meal. Other people might pick different things like stun resistance. Elemental status resistances are also nice, just for defense if you have nothing else on. And then there are other damaging skills. So Maximite, Agitator, and Latent Power all increase your critical hit rate, but they have weird conditions, which aren't the most reliable. So for the most part, I'm going to ignore them in my calculations, but they can help. So they're better than nothing, but they aren't going to be useful most of the time. So use them as you wish. You think of them as bonuses more so than like actual things you use. Anyway, yeah, so these are the useful skills. Okay, but as for when you're trying to get through the game in detail, there's been an excellent guide written up by the 8th June on Imager. They have a YouTube channel as well. I'll link those in the description, so check those out for more detail. But roughly, vaguely, so the important armor you might want to pick up are the Hunter, Barith, and Actisom gear, because they all have Quick Sheath, and like we said, Quick Sheath is really, really good for attacking faster. Otherwise, after those, you can use other gear that gives offensive skills. Again, just follow the priority list I had earlier. Weakness Exploit, Attack Boost, Crit Eye, Crit Boost. And then otherwise, is otherwise you can just do Skilled Cross if you want. Some people might think that's cheating, but if you just want to get through low rank easily, you can do that. So yeah, as for the longswords themselves, so basically let's go to the forge. Okay, so when you're progressing through the game, early on you might find the Actisom longsword really, really good. So that is going to be over here. So the Actisom Saber is really, really good for when you can get it. So that's going to be the first thing you're going to use. When you can, you might want to go switch to the Nargacuga tree, which you get from the Ore tree. So this is going to carry you for probably most of the game once you can make it. There are a few other things you can build in the meanwhile that are useful for like very short periods, like the Magnamalo longsword or the hand-me-down longsword. People say the Izuchi longsword as well, but they're going to be useful for like 3 hunts and then you'll get a new one. So I wouldn't really bother with those. I just focus on Actisom and Nargacuga. 2 other ones that could be worth building are the Tigrex. So once you finish the Nargacuga, the Tigrex tree will have its time in the spotlight. So that's over here. It's also from the Ore tree. What's important is if you want to use a Tigrex longsword, you're going to have to create it from scratch. So you can see the ramp-up skills that you can use. And the ramp-up skill you can make with some of the prerequisites is Silk Bind Boost, which is probably the best ramp-up skill you can use in the game for the longsword. But once you go to the Tigrex tree, you can't use Silk Bind Boost. So you need to make it from the Ore tree, upgrade it all the way to the Keen Edge 1, then get Silk Bind Boost, and then proceed through the Tigrex tree. So you need to make it from scratch. So you can do that while you're playing through the game as well, because this is going to be useful towards late game, and it's useful in one of the optimal sets. Another one you might want to consider building is the Rathalos tree. So you want to go from Ore into the Kuliaku tree, into the Rathian tree, and then from the Rathian tree into the Rathalos tree. This is the best fire longsword in the game and is optimal against quite a few monsters. So yeah, this is really, really good. And what's also really interesting about it is it also gets a unique wrap-up from a previous version, which is the Small Monster Exploit, which it gets when it's a Rathian longsword. This is a skill that increases damage to small monsters by 50%, and 50% is a lot. So if you want to optimize your damage and hit just as big numbers as possible, you want to use this. It's not very useful just because small monsters aren't going to give you much trouble, but it is funny. Otherwise, Rathalos has its own good ones, so Attack Boost and Elemental Exploit are both optimal in certain situations. So yeah, you can use those. But if you do want to do that, you can just craft the Rathalos tree straight out. So you don't really need to prepare earlier for that. You can craft it when you're able. So that's the longswords. Let's talk about the armor as well. So again, when you're playing through it, you probably want to focus on the stuff that gives you quick sheath or damage skills. So stuff like the Barrieth, Agnesellum, or Hunter gear. But also, some of these are going to be useful for the builds we're going to talk about later. So these are the ones you might want to consider upgrading with armor spheres. If you want to only use those on the ones that are actually going to be useful. So those ones specifically are going to be the Barrieth and Skull headpieces. So you get the Barrieth piece relatively early, which is going to be over soon, somewhere soon. Yeah, so here's a Barrieth, then I lost it. Okay, this is nice just because it gives a lot of slots. And defense boost, which gives it at least something that's useful for free. The Skull gear is useful too, because it has also a few slots and free Fortify. None of these are too great, but the armor pieces you get while you're progressing are incredibly good. So the Barrieth and the Vike armor are arguably both best in slot, so you definitely want to upgrade them because you are going to be using them late game, post game. For the hands, the Lagombi is also pretty useful. It's useful in some sets. Here we are over here. It has a lot of slots and gives you a lot of crit eye, which is nice. The Rathalos is outclassed, I want to say. The Rathalos hands are outclassed, but they're outclassed by, I think, the last gear you get. So it's worth using the Rathalos gear until that point and upgrading it. For waist, Anjanath is the best waist gear in the game. Like basically every set uses the Anjanath. Some use the Chrome Metal Coil, but the Anjanath gear is incredibly good. So many slots and 2 attack boost. As for the legs, Hunter and Ingot. So you get both of these incredibly early. Hunter is one of the first that you get, and it's the second best legs in the game. Here we are. 2 attack boost, 1 stun resistance, and a free 2 slot. It's great. And Ingot is ridiculously good. So Ingot S we have here has a 2 attack boost, 2 crit eye, and 1 free slot. So these ones, the ones in bold, you want to get, and you want to upgrade them to max because they will be incredibly useful. The ones that aren't, you want to consider upgrading them. Now the last thing you want to care about is your Talisman when you're progressing through the game. You can try getting this as you're playing through the game. You want a Talisman with Quick Sheath 2. So here's a whole slot on that. So basically Quick Sheath is an incredibly, well, relatively easy Talisman to get. So lucky us, we get our best Talisman relatively easily. So to get that, you want to wait until you unlock Moonbow Melding. So for Moonbow Melding, you can specify a skill, and then one of the skills you can pick is Quick Sheath. You want a Moonbow, give your stuff in, and then select Quick Sheath, because Quick Sheath is somewhat undervalued by the game. The game doesn't really think Quick Sheath is a good skill, which means it's relatively easy to get. And this is the easiest way to get Quick Sheath. You just keep doing this and select Quick Sheath. Eventually, you'll get a Quick Sheath 2 Talisman with 2 free 2 slots. So you can see that in, I believe, my current set, which you can see here. So I have a Quick Sheath 2 with 2 slots. One I use for critical boost and one I use for protective polish. And I also get 2 free meal. The 2 free meal doesn't matter, it's a bonus. I like it, but yeah. So what you want to do is you just want to keep Moonbow until you have Quick Sheath 2. You can do that while you're still playing through the game. You can unlock Moonbow decently early in high rank. And then you can do that. If you have extra charms, you can use the rest on the last one, which is Rebirth, which gives you the best possible charms, but you're less likely to get a good Quick Sheath charm. So if you just want a Quick Sheath charm to get these sets going, go Moonbow Melding until you get the Quick Sheath 2 charm. And then keep using Rebirth. But yeah, okay, cool. So that's all the prerequisite stuff. Now let's talk about the actual builds. Here we go. So the best longsword is the Phantom Mirage. So I'm going to show you my build cards right now. if I put that on screen now. So here we have the normal Phantom Mirage set. Basically this one is going to be your standard set that's useful in all situations, even if it's not going to be optimal. So to show that, to see that basically, you want to get 4 attack boost, 5 crit die. This gives you, I believe, 90% affinity, which is incredibly high, with a 3 weakness exploit, 3 crit boost, 3 quick sheath. You'll find this is going to be in basically all of the builds. You have 1 handicraft that'll boost you into wide sharpness, and you'll have 60 seconds of protective polish. So yeah, this is a nice all-round set. It's going to be the best set in most situations. You can't really go wrong with this set. If you just pick this set, you're going to do well with it. If you want to build just one set, go with this. It has the highest possible damage. It also has a free 1 slot, which I've used for Hungerless. I've used a few on Satiated as well, so that's free meal. If you're fighting something dangerous, like you know, an Apex Wrathian you're having trouble with, you can put on Poison Res instead, or an Elemental Resistance and stuff like that, which is good. There are a few things you can change in this build, so if you don't have a good enough charm, the easiest thing you can move is critical boost. So you can just remove critical boost, it doesn't decrease your damage by that much. Same deal if you want to use like Fortify, for example, you can swap out critical boost for Fortify without using too much damage. If you get a decently good Talisman, one that has a 3 slot instead of 2 slots, you can put Handicraft onto the charm instead. Swap your Vike Mail for the Barrier Mail, which will give you a free 1 slot, which is nice, and free Max Smite, which is also nice. So yeah, this is going to be your standard set. You can also put in an extra bit of Protective Polish, again by swapping in Crit Boost, or you can do the opposite. You can remove a Protective Polish and add in like an extra Expert or Attack Boost. Yeah, so these are your options. Yeah, so this is going to be your general best set. Next up though, we're going to talk about the Elemental Longswords, which are interesting. So here are the Elemental Longswords. So the Ice Longsword, we have 2 fire ones, we have a dragon one, and we have a water one, which are all going to be useful against specific monsters. The Ice one is going to be the Daora's Raid. This is probably the best Elemental Longsword in general. It's useful against so many monsters. So Apex Diablos, Rajang, Raknakadaki, Diablos, Pisha 10, Volvidon, and Great Rogi. I've ordered these by just how hard I think the monsters are. I think Apex Diablos is the hardest. But yeah, so basically this is how it looks like. Again, we have 10 hits of white and 60 seconds of sharpness. And we managed to fit 5 ice attack, but because of that we lose a point of speed sharpening. So that might be a bit annoying for you. You can swap ice attack for speed sharpening, but you lose out on damage. Or you can avoid that completely and use a Great Wetfish Fin and then move for speed sharpening to something else if you want. So again, options. But yeah, so this sword is incredibly good. This sword is incredibly overtuned and really, really good. So yeah, the next one we have is the Fire Longsword. So the Wyvern Blade Maple, the one I suggested you build earlier. So this one's quite good as well. This one only stays in blue sharpness, but its stats are high enough that it's still worth it. And this is what it looks like. So we have 4 attack boost, 7 crit die. There are a few things you can change here. So right now I have the Kaiser Vambraces, Teosur Vambraces, which gives Teosur Blessing, which gives a tiny bit extra damage. Instead of that, you can swap the Kaiser Vambraces for the Lagombi Hands. The Lagombi Hands loses Teosur Blessing, so loses a bit of damage. But it gives you an extra 1 slot, which you can use for speed sharpening, if you want to sharpen it a bit faster. Again, though, if you do want to use the Great Wetfish Fins, it doesn't really matter. Other stuff you can do, you can change the ramp-up skill. So Elemental Exploit is best against Chameleos, Gossarag, Kezu, and Great Bagi, but it doesn't work against Apex Azurus. If you don't know, Elemental Exploit just boosts your elemental damage by a decent proportion if their hit zone is above 25%. So Apex Azurus doesn't have elemental hit zones above 25%, so it doesn't work. So if you want to do that, you want to ramp attack instead of elemental exploit. Alternatively, you can use small monster exploit or small monsters. It is not useful, but it is really funny. You can do a lot of damage on small monsters that way. So there's that. Really good against these situations. Next up, we have the Dragon Longsword, the Reddnaught blade, which you get from Valstrax. And this one is optimal against Rathalos and Rathian, just their normal forms, not their apex forms. This one's very interesting because the sword has a huge amount of wide sharpness by default, which means you don't need to put in any protective polish or handicraft. You just go straight out with crit eye and attack boost, which is really good. Because it has so much sharpness, we don't really need speed sharpening. I put 2 anyway because there's nothing else to really put on, but you can put on, defensive skills, stuff like that if you want. Fire res because you're fighting the Rathians and the Rathalos maybe, as you wish. But yeah, this is in general a pretty solid set against these two. Not good against very many monsters, but it's still good against those two. The next one, this one's really interesting. So this is the, sorry, I didn't say that the Reddnaught blade, the dragon one, uses the ramp up skill, Wyvern exploit. And Wyvern exploit boosts your damage against Wyverns by 5%, which is needed to eclipse the damage of the normal ones. So yeah. Similar to that, we have the Kamura's Inheritance, which is Anti-Aquatic species, which is similar to Wyvern exploit. This one gives a 10% raw damage bonus to monsters that are aquatic. So that includes Almudon, Tetradon, and Royal Lutroth. So this set is optimal against those, not only because they are aquatic, but because they are a bit fire weak. So yeah, this one's really, really good. Similar stuff to the other sets. So basically, this longsword has a huge amount of native affinity, so we don't need to put crit eye, we just go all out on attack boost. Or we have handicraft to protect the polish and stuff like that. So yeah, this is in general a solid threat against these monsters, which aren't going to be that hard, but for completion. And the longsword looks really cool as well, so I like that. And finally, the last elemental longsword is going to be the USJ longsword. So this longsword isn't yet released. So let me just move this down a bit more. So this longsword isn't yet released, but it should be soon. So this one is going to be a really good water longsword. It's going to be really good against Teostra, Pisarius, and Agnesson. It'll overtake the Daora's raid on Teostra. So Teostra raid is no longer going to be good against Teostra. The Daora raid is no longer going to be good against Teostra. I'm going to want to use this one instead. This one is anti-aerial species, which is good against monsters with wings that can fly, including Teostra. But yeah, it's also really good against Volvidon, because Volvidon is so water weak, but Volvidon doesn't fly, so against Volvidon you want to use water boost instead of anti-aerial species. But yeah, this one's also really good. It has nice native affinity, so we have lower levels of crit eye. But again, we have 2 points of protect polish for 60 seconds. It has 20 hits of native whiteness, so we don't need the handicraft, and we have some extra sharpness as well. If you want, you can use Master's Touch on this because of that. In my previous video I talked about that. But yeah, for this I'm just going to assume Protective Polish is going to be the way you go. But yeah, so that's the elemental ones. So they're all going to be good against specific monsters. These are optimal and better than the raw longswords in these specific situations. No others. If you're fighting a whole bunch at once, if you're fighting one that's water weak and one that's fire weak, you're not going to swap longswords. You may as well just use the basic raw longsword. It takes too much time to swap, build up your spirit again. But if you're just fighting one monster that's weak to an element, use these longswords. So yeah, that is going to be the elemental longswords. Next up, let's talk about the Dragonheart. So this one is super, super interesting. So the Dragonheart longsword is Dragonheart is a skill which you get from the Valstrax here, which increases your damage significantly if you're under 80% health, roughly, depending on your level. And it increases your damage by a lot. The problem is that you need to be under 80% health, which means it's pretty risky. You're a bit more likely to die and you can't really heal. But if you can do that, it beats the normal raw build, it beats Mirage Finsword, and it beats it by so much. It also beats most of the elemental longsword builds. It doesn't beat the Daora's raid in a few situations, so against the Diabloses, Rajang, and Great Roggy, and other monsters, so Great Boggy against Fire, Royal Lutroth against the Anti-Aquatic, and Volvidon against the Water Longsword. They're so elemental weak that this still won't beat them, but they'll beat everything else. So yeah, this is what it looks like. So basically we're going to use the Valstrax set in all 5 slots. and put 1 point in crit eye. This gets you to 70% affinity, which is quite nice. And yeah, it damages everything else except for these specific ones. So use that if you want to use that. But now, we're going to get into stuff that I think is really interesting and people speak about a lot, so I thought I'd do the math in it. And that is going to be Rousing Roar. So if you didn't know, Rousing Roar is a Palico skill that you can get if you have a fight cat. They get it by default if they're a fight cat, and they need to be a fight cat to get Rousing Roar. And what it does is it increases your affinity by 30%. And 30% is a lot, and it changes the way a lot of the builds work. Because a lot of the times our affinity is going to be between 70% and 100%. So if we use Rousing Roar, we can't go above 100%, which means we're going to waste some of it. So in this one, we aren't going to try to get to 100 affinity, we're going to try to get to 70% affinity. And it means we can put stuff more into attack boost, which is going to improve our damage that way. So it has incredibly high damage, and this is the best one for that. So this set uses the Tigrine Need. So this is the one I suggested you build earlier, that gets Silkbind boost when it's a Keen Edge 1, so you need to make it from scratch, get the Keen Edge 1, get the Silkbind boost ramp skill, and then upgrade to Tigrine Need. And yes, so Silkbind boost increases the damage of your Silkbind attacks by 10%, and our best attack, well, our highest damage attack, is a Silkbind attack. So that's really, really good. So because you rely on your cat to use Rousing Roar, it's pretty unreliable. You need to rely on that, so it's not going to be useful in a lot of situations. But if you're doing a speed run, this could be really, really good to improve your damage. There was a good speed run I saw by the Art of Longsword where he fought a Gos Harag using this set, using a variant of this set, which is really, really good. So yeah, what he did though, he used 5 attack boost and 6 crit eye. So on average, 5 attack boost, 6 crit eye does less damage, but it has more potential damage. So again, for depends on the situation, for his uses, where he was doing something reset heavy, then that is probably the optimal build. He did the optimal build. This one is better on average, his one is better in those situations. So yeah, there are a few ways you can change this. You can just keep putting in more attack boost. Yes, and the other thing that's really cool about this, about Rousing Roar, is that our previous Dragonheart build, so this is the one that used Dragonheart on the Mirage Finsword, this one hits 70% affinity exactly, and Rousing Roar increases by 30%. This just turns out to be the optimal Rousing Roar longsword set. So Rousing Roar plus Rousing Roar plus Dragonheart gets you up to 527 roll, which is huge. That's a huge increase. So for comparison, the standard one gave us 469. So we got a 10% damage bonus, an over 10% damage bonus, which is huge. So yeah, you can use this if you are using your Rousing Roar and you want to use Dragonheart at the same time for the highest possible damage. Yeah, but again, this is unreliable, this is tough to use, and if you're trying to rely on Rousing Roar and Dragonheart at the same time, you might be having some difficulties. But yeah, it's the best way to get the max amount of damage. Next up, we're going to talk about how Rousing Roar affects the Elemental Longswords. In general, Rousing Roar affects the Elemental Longswords less well, like it's still a benefit, but less so, for a few reasons. One is that you can't really get critical hits on your element damage, so they naturally benefit less that way. But also these ones tend to have higher affinity than Tigrine Need. So yeah, because of more affinity than Tigrine Need, and because of that they get less benefit from the flat 30%, or less relative benefit. I've compared these sets to the Tigrine Need Rousing Roar set. If you try and compare it to the Dragonheart Rousing Roar set, you're going to lose. So the Dragonheart Rousing Roar set is higher damaging than everything else, including elemental sets against the elemental weak monsters. If you ignore that and you compare this to the Tigrine Need set that doesn't rely on Dragonheart but does use Rousing Roar, here is your comparisons. So you have the Reddnaught blade, which is still going to be comparably. Sorry, I skipped a few. So first up, we have the Daora's Raid, which loses a goodness on a few things, but it beats Apex, Diablos, Rajang, Diablos, and Great Robbie still. You go up to 6 attack boost, you need to swap a few things to do that, but yeah, you also get free Fortify this way at least. For the Wyvern Blade Maple, for the Fire Longsword, you lose the benefit against the Apex Izaros, but you're still useful against a few things. So yeah, if you want to use Rousing Warrior, you can do this. For the Reddnaught Blade, this is the one that was hurt the least. This one's comparably as good to the older one. Because you can hit attack boost 7, which is incredibly efficient. So you can do this one instead. And the Kamura's Inheritance, the Anti-Aquatic one, is only going to be good against Albajon and Royal Ladroth. So again, we're losing something it's good at, but it's still going to be good in a lot of situations. The one that got hurt the most actually is going to be the USJ Longsword. Mainly because this one had so much natural affinity that you're wasting a lot of stuff. So basically, it's only going to be good in Spolvidon, so you want to use Water Boost only for this set. There's no point using the Anti-Aerial. Another fun thing I guess I want to just point out is that the Kamura's Inheritance one, so this one has a huge amount of native affinity, so this is the only set that doesn't use Weakness Exploit 3, because it already hits 100% affinity without, which I think is pretty funny. Anyway, yeah, so these are the Rousing Roar elemental builds. And yeah, I think these are all of the meta builds. There is a Rousing Roar Dragonheart Tigrey Need build, but that is suboptimal to the Rousing Roar Dragonheart Mirage Windsword build, which is again this one. So this is the Dragonheart Phantom Mirage, and this is the Dragonheart Rousing Roar Tigrey. Anyway, so with that in mind, let's talk about the weird off-meta longswords, which you can see on screen now. So first one is going to be a Phantom Mirage with Master's Touch 3. So that's a typo there, oops. But basically Master's Touch 3 is going to let us sharpen less. We have 71 hits of white, which is nice, but you lose about 7% damage. So easy to set if you don't want to sharpen. Next up is going to be the Blast Longsword. So this one has nice and high blast using the Teostra Longsword, the Imperial Shimmer. It's nice for the Rampage quests where you want to inflict status. So blast is really easy to inflict, which is quite nice. But it deals about 20% less damage than Mirage Windsword, which is, sorry, Phantom Mirage it's called, which is pretty bad, but fine. You get Fireblight Exploit, which is an interesting Rampage skill that increases damage if a monster is Fireblighted. And in Rampage, people can be Fireblighted a lot thanks to the Wyvern Fire. So I think that's pretty fun and interesting. And the last off-meta option is going to be the Rampage Blade. So this is the one that you can customize in any different way. This is the best way you can get Paralysis on a longsword if you want to do that. So Paralysis 2 and Attack Surge. Alternatively, you can swap Paralysis 2 for anything else, for an Elemental or another status. And this is still going to be the best way to build it. Again, you lose a lot of damage, but you can customize it, so you can make it look however you want. It's not going to be optimal, but it'll be nice looking at least. If you wanted to make a raw version, you swap Paralysis Boost for non-elemental boost, and you swap Attack Surge for Affinity Surge, which is slightly more optimal. And by slightly, I mean like 0.2%, but it's more optimal. So yeah, basically this is how you're going to build your Rampage sets. And with that, that's basically going to be all of the sets. That'll be everything. So let's go to the conclusions. Basically, to sum us up, Phantom Mirage is generally going to be the best longsword. It has the most damage in most situations. But other than that, there are very specific uses where we're going to use the other ones. So Daora's Raid is a good Ice Longsword against Ice Weak monsters. Overblade Maple against Fire Weak monsters. Kamura's Inheritance against the Aquatic Fire Weak monsters. Reddnaught Blade against Rathian and Rathalos. The USJ Longsword against monsters that are Water Weak, including Teostra. And Tiger Need if you want to use Rousing Roar but not Dragonheart. If you want to use Dragonheart, go back to the Phantom Mirage. And yeah, that's basically it. That should be all of the builds in Monster Hunter Rise, finally properly analyzed. Hopefully you've learned a lot from that. If you can, please like and subscribe and all that stuff. I'll put out a few other Monster Hunter videos over the next few days or weeks, if you're interested in that. If you have any requests or things you want me to talk about for Monster Hunter or Longswords, please let me know. If there are any corrections you can make, please suggest them. I'm not perfect, these could have mistakes, but as far as I know, these are mathematically optimal. I'm planning on doing some analysis that can like output a build given your best charm. You put in your charm and it tells you your best build. So that should be coming up in a few weeks. So stay tuned for that if you are interested. And with that, thank you all for watching and happy hunting.